Have you adopted your kid yet, or are you still going
Not
through
yet.
that?
Not yet. We've still got a good bit of time, probably, within the next year, still hoping that
Okay.
within that span of time. Seems to be a large span of time, but can't guarantee one thing or the other, just within the next year, hopefully.
So why did you make the decision, you and your wife, why did you make the decision to adopt?
Well, it was a huge question that we've had. We've been married for 5 years now, and so, we're young. I'm 25, so children didn't really come into the picture because we wanted to make sure that we were stable in a good place.
Fair enough.
Before we actually pursued having children or adoption or anything like that.
Yeah.
I had not fully considered fostering or adopting until probably 2019, last year.
Okay.
I had a conversation with a friend who I met up with on a regular basis, every couple months or so. And we had a conversation about adoption, and he had been adopted. And so he got to share his experience. And as a Christian, we've talked about, part of the Christian faith is our adoption into God's family.
Okay.
And that had kind of worked its way into our conversation that one of the best things that can be done for a child in need is to bring them into a family.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of opened up the possibilities and our options in our future family, that adoption would be one of those options.
Yeah. So was that a hard decision? Were you guys torn about that for a while?
Yeah, we've had, like I said, we're young, so we've had career opportunities. We both graduated college, my wife and I, got set into our career field,
Mm-hmm.
and we weren't sure what bringing in another person into our family dynamic was going to look like. Yes, and like that is so true, that no one is really ever prepared to be a parent. It's just because you're dealing with another human being with with their own will and their own decisions to make and their own bad decisions to make. And you get used to a spouse, right? And how they interact with you, and you learn how to interact with them. And usually that takes years, dating, engagement, and then of course marriage, and how long that takes to get used to each other. So particularly with adoption, that's bringing in a child who probably has had developmental delays or trauma in their history.
Yeah.
That really affects their mood swings and their own reactions. That this brings in a different kind of struggle, a different kind of challenge that we would have to be prepared for. So it really is kind of a psychological thing to prepare your mind for the hardship.
Yeah.
The stress, the time, the attention that it takes to take care of them properly.
So what was the thought process immediately before you said, hey, I'm ready?
Well, we had opened ourselves up for foster care, got into that process, and part of the foster care system is to take care of a child temporarily. That is probably the broadest sense for foster care, but you can adopt through foster care. So once we had taken that temporary step into caring for a child, we really considered his needs and long term what that was going to look like. Was he going to need a permanent home, and would we be the best place for him? Would we provide the most
Yeah.
resources and be ideal?
Mm-hmm.
So the moment before we decided, we thought, if he leaves us, if our foster child leaves us, will he be going to a better place, or is there a better home for him to go to?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not to say that there's no other family that could treat him well and raise him well.
Yeah.
But that we have been positioned so well to take him on, that we weren't as hesitant as we were before.
Okay.
We thought, the struggles are there, and they
Yeah.
are, you
Yeah.
know, but that we have been we've been put in a place where I've been trained to deal with trauma
Mm-hmm.
and with abuse and neglect histories. Through my work, I've been trained through that, and my wife obviously has been trained as an interpreter, how she is able to connect with him on a communication level that other families just can't, or in a way, his options are just going to be limited. So we found ourselves in the right place, the right time, with the right resources, and felt that
Mm-hmm.
that God had set this up, that we couldn't say no. It was
Okay.
something that it was
Yeah.
important.
So, when you got the foster kid initially, were you thinking we want to potentially adopt a kid, or were you not really thinking about that? What were you thinking at that point?
At first, it was a big moment to care for the kid, and we had already established a relationship prior to him coming into our care,
Okay.
and so we wanted to make sure that he was taken care of through the process, his
Mm-hmm.
situation and his circumstances, and so it was, like I said, last year had conversations with a friend, and so our willingness to pursue that route
Mm-hmm.
was there. We hadn't committed necessarily to it right off the bat for sure, but we knew that if adoption became an option, that we would definitely be open to that.
Okay.
We didn't want to make a relationship and then break a relationship,
Yeah.
especially if he needed us.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I know a family who adopted 8 kids, and then they got a divorce.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is so rough.
It is. It really
know.
is. Those kids are gonna have trust issues for sure.
It's true. It's so true. And it's a commitment that, as a Christian, again, I see marriage as a covenant. That means that it can't be broken.
Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't be broken. And so bringing children into the world through your own children, and biological children anyway, you're making a commitment to them too.
Yeah.
And so when you are bringing somebody out of your family into your family through adoption or through foster care, that kind of commitment is even more so, because you didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to take that kid on,
Yeah.
but you chose to. That's hard. I feel sorry for the kids in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I do hope that they have some stability through the divorce process, but
Yeah,
that's unfortunate.
it is. So, have you had a desire in the past to adopt kids, like even before you were married, or has that been a thought in your mind?
A little bit. Like I said, through my Christian faith, the pure and undefiled religion is to take care of the widows and the orphans,
Mhm.
right? And so I think kids who are in the foster care system, or particularly in the foster care system, fall under the orphan category. That's James 1:26. And I think that I've always considered it to be an option not seriously for myself. I've always promoted it for other people. There's the Holt International, which is an organization that works, I think, through Winter Jam, the concert Winter Jam. And I had volunteered at that concert for several years, and they had an adoption or a sponsor program through that. And I volunteered for that probably junior high through high school, several years in between those two. Okay. And so that had been kind of a focus of the concert area, was to look at these kids who need assistance and take care of them.
So did that spark your interest? Is that
probably, gave a good, it planted some seeds, let's say that. It planted some seeds in my mind that I wasn't I had no aversion to adoption.
So how did you wind up with this specific kid?
So we had an opportunity to work with a child while he was still with his biological family, and
That's
took care.
interesting.
We were able to take care of him off and on when the family needed it, and when the situation came where he needed to be removed from that family, we were a place that he could feel safe, and so we opened our doors for him to come and live with us for the meantime. When circumstances showed that this wasn't just a short time thing, that it was going to be more of a long term, we again saw that as an opportunity to take care of him, provide for him, give him resources that he was lacking beforehand, and just were waiting on the courts to make a decision one way or the other. And of course, that's still a process. That started last year in September, and so we have been taking care of him for the last year and a couple months.
Okay.
So,
So I'm guessing you can't talk about the situation that led to him being removed from the home?
No, I can't. Our foster kid is deaf, and so that means that from the moment he was born, he was tested to be profoundly deaf, which just means that there are certain things that he can hear, but that is like probably less than 1% of any sound that exists.
Okay.
So he would probably be able to hear a motorcycle just because of the different frequencies that it's on.
So it's a frequency thing, not an amplitude thing?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, if it's louder, it's not like he's going to hear you if you speak louder.
Okay.
There's a chart. I wish I could remember it, but they have a list of things that he could hear and things that he can't hear, and obviously it's like hums and stuff like that. He can't distinguish speech. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people, a misconception with the deaf is that if they could only hear, then they would be able to understand, But it's also association, Up until the age of 2 or 3, there's a lot of neurological pathways that are developed that a child will hear things and they will associate it with whatever that sound is. Where is it coming from? And those things are developed. And again, I'm no expert on it, but for him, he had no aid or no surgeries or treatments or anything since he was born, and so he grew up just without any development in his ears, meaning that he can't hear practically anything. Profoundly deaf. Is what they're called. And because of that, he needed a language in order to communicate. Again, children learn language within the first couple years of birth.
Yeah.
And he didn't have access to language well beyond that. And when he did get access to certain language, it wasn't reinforced, right?
Okay.
And so he might learn the alphabet, but if he's not taught it and practicing it, it just kind of not in one ear out the other. It's more in through the eyes and never replicated through signing, and so for him, he did not have development of language, so he was probably communicating at half his age level.
Yeah.
So, for an 8-year-old, speaking at a 4 or signing at a 4-year-old communication level.
Yeah.
Which is a huge detriment to him. He's not going to be able to pick up math and reading and anything if he's held at that level of education.
You're going to have to wait for him to catch up.
Yes. And a lot of people just don't have the resources to catch up that much.
Do you feel like he's coming up to speed, like he's catching up, or do you feel like he's more offset in his development of language ability?
Language-wise, expressing himself, he is caught up. He is on par with his peers. He probably even has he's a little bit more, how do you say this? He can express himself better, I would say, than several of his peers, because he's been given focused treatment, so to speak, to improve in those areas. So I think that expression, he's on par. As far as the rest of his grade level, he is working his way up. A lot of that is reading and writing, and because English is not his first language, ASL, American Sign Language, is his first language, it's going to be harder for him to catch up. But he is doing pretty well, and he's exponentially progressing, more so than he was before CARE, for sure.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, for sure. And he's a smart kid. He adapts well. I think the areas that he will continue to struggle with and need improvement on are on the emotional levels. Just being able to separate his feelings in a way that he can address them appropriately. And that probably goes for all kids. All kids, all teenagers are going through a process of learning how to emotionally cope with things. But more so because of his history. Yeah, it's something he's going to have a while to work with. I was working as a family and community specialist at the juvenile office, and we would work with kids who were all over the place on educational development, and we probably had a class size of like 5 to 10 people, 5 to 10 kids. And we had to be really specific and focused with each one of those kids in order to try to get them ahead or get them on track. So I understand how important it is to get those things taken care of early. Which he was just at a disadvantage of.
So how do you feel about using the word special needs?
I in a general sense, I don't have a problem using it, particularly for kids who deal with autism or ADHD, who haven't developed to their age level or to their expected age range. I don't have a problem with special needs. In regards to the deaf, though, I would say that they aren't falling into that category of special needs unless they have autism or ADHD, things that would, maybe not even ADHD, but things that would kind of compile upon each other, because as long as they have access to communication and the language, they can be on track with anybody. So the fact that they're deaf doesn't put them in a bad position for learning or for growing, as long as they have access to language.
So would you say that you have a special needs kid or not?
No.
Okay.
Probably not.
Would you get offended if someone else said he was a special needs kid?
I wouldn't get offended. And I would just probably correct it.
Okay.
I understand that there's a lot of. I mean, I just got to empathize with people. There's a lot of things that I don't know that if I'm talking about, I would want people to show grace and mercy to me.
Yeah.
If I say something stupid or wrong. So I would want to show that grace towards them, because there's things I'm ignorant of, and there's things that other people are ignorant of or just haven't been in that situation before. I wouldn't want to hold it against them.
Yeah.
So I would tell them, I would explain it briefly.
Okay.
But yeah, I wouldn't say he's special needs.
So how has this kid changed you?
Oh, that's a great question. It's a great question. I look at things differently. I always kind of compartmentalized, right? I go to work, that's my workspace. I go home, that's my home space. If I'm doing hobbies, that's all that, compartmentalizing. Now that we have a child, it's not so much about what I'm doing and what I need to do, it's what they're doing and what they need to do.
Yeah.
And so my responsibilities have increased, obviously.
Yeah.
I have a responsibility to make time for him. I have a responsibility to teach him. Even if he's going to school, it's my responsibility to teach him more. Particularly after I work in the school system now. You look at the things that aren't being taught, and you're like, well, this is my opportunity, and explain it to him. So my responsibilities have increased. My priorities have changed.
Yeah.
Not entirely. I mean, I always knew that I needed to provide for my family, and that I needed to be a good example, not only for children, but for people around me.
Yeah.
So I knew those things, but they've just kind of been heightened.
Okay.
That if I'm at work, I need to work to make sure that we've got enough money coming in, that the things that I'm signing or saying, communicating, are being watched, and so even more so they're being watched.
Yeah.
And so I need to be wise in what I say and how I do things.
Yeah.
An extra set of eyes just always kind of puts you in check and makes you kind of evaluate yourself more, I think.
Has it made you more self-aware, do you think?
Yes. My pet peeves are definitely, I spotlighted them several times, some of which being, I like alone time, I like being by myself. Not all the time, obviously. I love being. I'm like, I'm a social person. I really am I'm pretty outgoing. However, I really like just decompressing and being out in nature and stuff. But with a child, your attention has always been, always drawn. Come on, look at me.
Yeah.
And so, I like being alone to recharge, so to speak. I realized several things that I took for granted. Going out to dinner, it becomes a whole different thing. So different. It doesn't necessarily have to be like we have to go and the problem isn't like kid food things we have to go to. It's like, well, can we afford 3 people this night, or we can't, like date nights. Date nights are harder because we have to find a babysitter.
Yeah.
Or staying on top of that kind of stuff. So I mean, there are certainly things that we took for granted that we miss. But
so how does finding a babysitter for a mostly deaf kid work?
Yeah, well, the babysitter has to know sign language, right? And so one of the great things for us in our situation is that we've had a really supportive family, which means that we've got a lot more resources for that kind of thing, that they're able to watch him more often. And we've also been able to build some really good relationships within the deaf community, especially here in Springfield. There's a good deaf community here that we've been able to connect with several families.
Yeah.
And that has not only been good for the babysitting side of things, but it's also been good for our education and how they raise their kids, and what kinds of things have helped them. So that's been really good, building good relationships in the community.
So what's school been like? And since COVID-19 is going on right now, has that affected it?
Yeah. So, like, just school in general?
Yeah.
You know, early on, before COVID and stuff, we were learning parenting through, how to teach our kids through parenting and all that. It was all fresh and new. So we kind of hit the ground running with that, really helped him with his homework, reinforced all the stuff he was learning. Then, of course, you kind of zoom to March, and COVID hit. Everyone's going home. It's like this temporary hiatus. Classes were just like not a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and so we had to all be at home 24/7 around each other, no break. And we did that for like 2-3 weeks. And I was like, I didn't mind it because it was like spring break time. So I was like, okay, well, stay home or staycation, right? But that wears on you.
Yeah.
And like I said, when you have a kid who's wanting your attention, and you have no break, it really builds up a lot of stress.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine having more than one kid at home. It was really difficult. They eventually started getting classes going, and he went through summer school as well. We did summer school virtually the first half, and that was a whole different thing. You talk about, like, kids learning how to work a computer is one thing, but like having to work a computer while you're at home with all these distractions of your dog and the smells of lunch being cooked or whatever, was really difficult to get him on track. Especially for the long haul. But we worked through that. Eventually they opened up the school for summer school that he went to go to, and that was good. Then when this semester started, they went to a 2-day a week, right? So the kid was expected to come to school in person for 2 days, and then the other 3 days they would stay home, work from home virtually.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, just from a practical perspective, we can't afford a babysitter for 3 days of the week. We have to work. We both work full time, and trying to work out a schedule that worked with that was impossible.
Yeah.
Impossible.
It sounds complicated.
Yeah, and we both worked in the school system, and so we were at work the entire time that he was going to be needing to work at school. So we worked it out with the school that he would be, and several other students would be able to come in 4 days a week, and then we would just have to afford that one Wednesday babysitting. So that worked out pretty well. Again, scheduling was a hard deal to work with, and also finding a babysitter who can consistently come and who also could sign.
Yeah.
Took a little bit of effort for sure, but we found a person, and she was really, really good and very gracious. She watched him, and we were able to work consistently. Now, this is the first week that all schools are 4 days. We have to adjust ourselves. Me and my wife have to adjust for the stress of school being that large again, all the kids coming back 4 days.
Yeah.
We have to kind of resettle ourselves, regulate ourselves. And we'll see how that goes. Because right now, I think that our kid is feeling the tension of that.
Yeah.
Even just being in school and seeing all the kids there, I think that he's having to deal with that on his own way as well. But so we'll see. We'll see how that turns out in the long run.
Yeah. You think you might adopt other kids in the future?
Uh, Maybe. We would be open to it. Of course, we open to it this time. Never tell God no. If He sets something up that we can be used for the benefit of another child, we would be open to it for sure. Not searching for that, but we would be open to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to have biological kids of your own?
Still on the table. This whole experience of being a parent for a year definitely puts into perspective how much of a commitment and how much you have to devote to the child. It's still on the table. Yeah.
Fair enough.
And we're still young, so
yeah,
lots of time for that.
hopefully.
Yeah.
What would you say to other people who are considering the foster care system or adoption?
Yeah, I actually had a situation or an opportunity. I went to a college retreat. We had it at the beginning of the year, New Year's kind of thing. And while we were there, I actually ran into a man who he and his wife were really considering foster care, but they just weren't sure. They weren't convinced yet. And so I did have the opportunity to share with them my experience with it. I would tell other people, again, that it's a big commitment. It really is. There's a lot of history and past trauma that goes on within the kids who go through foster care.
Yeah.
So just being willing to have the patience. It takes a lot of patience because they have been going through life in a fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
Fight or flight, and for them to be in a stable home is just unusual. And so they're going to do things that just don't make sense.
Oh yeah.
They're even when it's like you should be happy that we're going to Chuck E. Cheese or what, you got this whole party or whatever. There's going to be a variety of responses that you just don't see coming.
Yeah.
So just having patience and understanding that's a commitment, but to go for it. I think ultimately, people who are in a position to consider foster care, that they have the resources and that they have the support, the family support to do that, that they should do it, that they should go for it. I'm not on the line or on the side that says, you should foster care 11 kids and foster care is the end in itself. I think adoption should be the end goal that you're pursuing.
Yeah.
Just because my own personal conviction, I feel like it's hard to bring a kid into a relationship with your family and then to just break that relationship sometime down the road.
Yeah.
So definitely consider what your goals are. But I would recommend pursuing adoption if you're going into foster care.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you feel like you can be a temporary placement and build a good relationship, not one that makes them feel bonded to you forever, but in a place where you can have a good relationship with them and take care of them while they're, maybe they're aging out. Take care of a 16-year-old for a couple of years until they can live life on their own.
Yeah.
Or, taking care of 11 kids who just need a place to be because there's no other place for them to go. There's a whole range of options. So definitely, if you're feeling like you want to do it, I would get involved with caseworkers, social workers who work with the juvenile office, especially because they deal with kids going through situations like that. And I would ask them the questions, what's expected of you? How long of a commitment do you need to prepare for? What classes you need to take? I would definitely just recommend it.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing, but it's a good thing, and you're making a difference in their life, whether it is a temporary thing or a forever thing. Yeah.
What have you done to help him overcome any trauma or just baggage that he's brought with him?
Yeah. We've had therapy set up, which is great. Nobody should dog therapy ever, because it creates a safe space to discuss raw emotions and perspectives, So we've set up therapy. We've had open and frank conversations about various topics, ranging from what normal means and what unusual is, because there's so many things that he just visually sees and interprets in his mind, and then he accepts that as like everyone goes through that, or everyone lives this way. So trying to reorient his mind so that he understands what is normal.
Yeah. It can be hard for any kid to grasp that.
And it really can. I mean, and this is an example not related to anything with our situation, but if you had a kid growing up in a home who sees that the parent, the father, gets drunk and beats on the wife, and then the next day they're all hunky-dory and they're fine, and then it happens again a week later, and then the next day the husband and wife are hunky-dory and it's fine, and they just accept, it's normal for a man to beat on his wife. That doesn't become a bad thing. It doesn't become something that you tell everybody, oh no, this happened. It's just like, it's normal. When was the last time yours? And they just think that way. But so it definitely can be a process that, like I was saying earlier, you got to be prepared for, because you have to have that conversation. As a parent, it's your responsibility to tell them what reality is. This is wrong. This is right. So many times people shirk that responsibility, whether because they think that the schools can teach them that, or they think that there's no such thing as right and wrong. It's just your perspective, what hurts you, what doesn't hurt you, what feels good, what makes you happy.
Yeah.
So it's a big responsibility. So we want to take that on, make sure that we had those open conversations with him. And also a lot of family involvement, right? So my parents, my wife's parents, our church family, all of them being a part of his circle, in his community, really gives him something to draw from.
Yeah. Support networks are huge.
Yes. Because without it, I might say something to him, but if it's not reinforced by other people, then it's kind of over his head or tucked away. And so being able to surround him with people who live out that life of like, oh, they're not divorced, because divorce is not normal. It's not the goal. It's not something that that is a good thing, per se. They look at how we respond to interaction. How we respond when we get upset. Are we just freaking out and busting a person across the face, or are we calm? Do we have an argument? Whether it's it might be a little bit heated, but it ends up well, and you have a good conversation and get over it. Yeah. And so him just seeing those interactions, it helps him interpret things correctly and it helps it to stick. Really.
Yeah.
I would just say that that God has really set us up to take him in and to provide for him. We are not in hurt for anything. We've been taken care of by the caseworkers and through the state. There's just been a lot of really good cooperation that I'm really grateful for. And I think that as long as you maintain good communication with your team, especially through the foster care system, they will do everything that they can to help you.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to be concerned of in that sense. So I'm just really grateful.
Cool. Well, thanks for talking with me.
Yeah, definitely. And I appreciate the time.